should we as a moral people allow the prosecution of this individual, which is the moral question, which you say yes, and we would all say no.
You would say no?
This cop should not be prosecuted, no.
And you would think that was moral?
Due process mean? What does due process mean?
Due process means not having, how do I put this into words? Due process is people being given the chance to make their case.
Incorrect.
Before.
That's not correct.
Well, hold on. Before you correct me, my understanding.
No, that's not correct.
Yes, they do.
You are incorrect.
The Fourth Amendment does not refer to citizens. It refers to people.
You are incorrect.
Is that not what the Fourth Amendment says?
Okay, that's sophistry. Okay.
It just
no
means the
person
proper
shall be
legal
held to
proceeding.
answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia, when in actual service in time of war. No, he had his due process rights violated.
How?
He was sent to Sikot. He was not supposed to be removed from this country.
Says who?
He had, because he already had stay of removal.
He had expedited removal, indeed.
No. He had something designated.
Dude, you guys are about to watch one of the most brutal intellectual demolitions I've seen in a while. Tim Pool absolutely destroys this girl Katie on immigration law and due process. Like, it's not even close. She comes in with the typical leftist talking points about constitutional rights being violated, due process, all the buzzwords they love to throw around without actually understanding what any of it means. And Tim just systematically dismantles every single argument she makes. It's honestly painful to watch how confident she is while being completely wrong. Like, she genuinely thinks she's making points. And the best part? Tim brings receipts. He's citing the actual Constitution, explaining how immigration courts work, breaking down the difference between citizens and non-citizens under the law. And she just keeps doubling down on feelings and Wikipedia summaries. I know you guys don't need me to explain how satisfying this is. So let's get into it. Watch this.
Should we as a moral people allow the prosecution of this individual, which is the moral question, which you say yes, and we would all say no.
You would say no?
This cop should not be prosecuted, no.
And you would think that was moral?
Yes.
Quite literally, we can't prosecute him. Like, and the only way to prosecute someone for federal action would be political.
No, I'm talking about morality.
That's what I'm saying.
Not legally.
I'm just saying, like, even in the sense of morality, I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna like advocate for charging someone purely on political motivation. That's just ridiculous.
Do you think it's immoral for the Trump administration to not want to work with the Minnesota state?
I think it is the most moral thing they could do.
To politicize this?
They're not politicizing it. It is politicized. There's no way around it. It's political.
It is political, but they are
when political
obviously
activists
furthering it.
So let me put it like this. The American people voted for these ICE operations. Immigration was a top issue, and Trump won, and the Republicans won everything. That doesn't mean everyone in the country agrees with it, but the American voter, democracy, has spoken. So Trump is now carrying out the will of the American voter, and the way it works is if you got a problem with it, you vote in the midterms and you vote in the next election. In the meantime, this is democracy in action. To subvert that, as the activists are doing, politicized what the American people voted for. After the fact, it just is political.
I think there's things in tension with that because, yes, Americans did vote for Donald Trump, and he obviously ran on mass deportation, so you were co-signing that policy most likely if you voted for him. But I think most Americans also care about the rule of law, they care about the Constitution, and so when they voted for that, they assumed that the mass deportation program would be carried out in conformity with the Constitution.
It is.
And there have been multiple instances where people's due process rights are violated.
Who?
People are, what's her name? Ozturk, Mahmoud Khalil, Kilmar Abrego Garcia.
Hold on. You cited two examples of constitutional movements.
Yeah, their due process. Like Kilmar Abrego Garcia was labeled a terrorist by the Trump administration before he had even been found.
What does due process mean?
Due process means not having, how do I put this into words? Due process is people being given the chance to make their case.
Incorrect.
Before.
That's not correct.
Well, hold on. Before you correct me, my understanding is that people's due process has to do with them being able to be given a fair shot if the state acts against them.
That's not what due process is. Due process is...
Which is to say, make their case, it's brought to a, a judge and who is a neutral
Due process
mediator
is not a proper noun. It's a generic term, literally meaning... We can stop saying the phrase due process because people think it's a proper phrase, like a proper noun, like it cites law. It's literally just a generic phrase meaning the process by which a person has in law. That's all it means.
What about the Fourth Amendment?
What about the Fourth Amendment? Which one? Which part of it?
The due process.
Due process of law means in different circumstances, certain people are entitled to certain actions.
Yes.
Kilmar Abrego Garcia's due process. Or let's avoid him for the time being and talk about
He's you asked me for an example. He's a good example to go off of.
And he had his due process.
No, he had his due process violated.
No, he did not. That's
yes,
incorrect.
he did. The Supreme Court said he ordered the
Okay.
Trump administration to
Yep.
bring him back because he had been illegally deported.
That, so
and he was deported in error, which the Trump administration admitted and then walked back.
this is incorrect. So we got to break all this down, okay, to avoid, it's going to get clipped either way. An illegal immigrant enters the country through the southern border, right? Let's say a guy from Mexico crosses the border, runs full speed, 60 miles into the United States. What is his due process in this circumstance after he is apprehended?
That you are going to be told and read your charges, told and read your rights,
Incorrect.
and you're going to be given a court date
Incorrect.
and given the chance to make your
Incorrect.
case before
That's
a judge.
that's not what the law or the Constitution says. The process by which an alien is due, because due process is not a proper phrase, it's a generic phrase, meaning the word due literally means due and process literally means process. So we have executive immigration courts, and the judiciary has nothing to do with it. The process by which an illegal immigrant is due is called expedited removal. Non-citizens who enter this country illegally do not have the right to a jury trial or a court. Citizens
Yes, they
and
do.
resident aliens.
No, they don't.
That's not correct.
Yes, they do.
You are
because
incorrect.
The Fourth Amendment does not refer to citizens; it refers to people.
You are incorrect.
Why am I incorrect? Is that not what the Fourth Amendment says?
Okay, that's sophistry. Okay,
Okay, so look, this is the part where you can see Kaity has absolutely no idea what she's talking about. She keeps saying due process, like it's some magic phrase that means everyone gets a trial with a judge and a jury. And Tim is trying so hard to explain to her that due process is not a proper noun. It's not some universal standard that applies the same way to every single person. It literally just means the legal process you are due based on your status. Like, dude, this is basic constitutional law. An illegal immigrant who runs across the border does not have the same due process rights as a U.S. citizen. That's not controversial. That's not Trump being authoritarian. That's literally how it's always worked. But she can't comprehend that because she's been fed this narrative that anyone who sets foot on American soil gets full constitutional protections. That's not how it works. It's never been how it works. And Tim breaks it down perfectly. Immigration is under the executive branch. Immigration courts are not judicial courts. They're executive functions. You don't get a jury trial over whether you get deported if you're here illegally. You get expedited removal. That's your due process. And look, I know that sounds harsh to some people, but that's the law. That's what Congress established. That's what the Constitution allows. And here's the thing. Kaity knows she's losing this argument. You can hear it in her voice. She keeps trying to pivot to specific cases like Kilmar Berger Garcia, which we'll get to in a second. But she's doing that because she can't win on the actual legal argument. So she's grasping for emotional examples. And Tim sees right through it. He's not letting her off the hook. He's making her define terms. He's making her cite sources. And she can't do it. She's operating off of activist Twitter threads and Wikipedia summaries. Meanwhile, Tim is pulling up the actual text of the Fourth and Fifth Amendments and explaining what they actually mean in this context. It's not even a fair fight. Like, I almost feel bad for her. But then I remember she came on here acting like she was about to school Tim Pool on constitutional law. And yeah, no sympathy. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about this whole due process debate.
Is when you cite the
Yes,
literal
'cause we
words
are
of the
not
Fourth Amendment and the
no.
Constitution.
you're doing it again.
When I'm talking about
I did
due
not
process,
say you are not correct on the language and definitions used in the Fourth Amendment. I'm saying
No,
you're
you
not
said I was doing
correct
a
on
sophistry
what
by
is.
citing the Constitution.
No, I'm saying it's sophistry to imply that the phrase people refer to aliens who run through our country across the border illegally, because it does not. Due process refers to, of your status, what you're entitled to.
Yeah.
This is
Some-
what I'm referring to when I say due process.
Is a
The
trial,
Fourth
a
Amendment,
court hearing.
The right of the people to be
Yeah.
secure in their persons,
No.
houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable
That's not
searches
due
and
process.
seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue, but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation.
That's not due process.
Particularly describing. Okay, what is your understanding
Due
of
process.
due process?
Due process refers to the legal requirement that the government must respect all legal rights owed to a person, ensuring fair treatment in legal proceedings. That doesn't mean that they get a trial. Doesn't mean that if you're
Immigration
here legally,
law, the Constitution, reserves immigration issues specifically to the executive branch. The immigration courts are not part of the judicial branch, they're part of the executive branch. And the law states that the Secretary of State has unilateral authority to remove any non-citizen at any point for any reason. So Ozturk specifically, it was the discretion of Marco Rubio under the law to say, your visa has been revoked. Thank you and have a nice day. And for that, she is being detained and deported. That is due process
sorry,
of law.
I've been talking about the Fourth Amendment. I meant to say the Fifth Amendment. Nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. That's
Who?
federal
Who?
process
Hold on,
of
hold
the
on.
Fifth
Who?
Amendment.
Who?
Any individual in which the
What
state
does it
acts
say?
against
What does it
them.
say?
Let me pull up the entire Fifth Amendment. Sorry.
Indeed, because it's important to know what it says.
when you say due process of law, it doesn't mean that everyone gets a court trial with a jury. It just
No
means the
person
proper
shall
legal
be held to
proceeding.
answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia, when in actual service in time of war or public danger, nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. That is the Fifth Amendment.
And so now the question is, what does due process mean? Because you're citing the Fifth Amendment, but you're assuming due process means you get a court hearing. That's not true. There are many circumstances in which someone doesn't get a court trial, even if they're U.S. citizens, like if you're insane. They adjudicate your insanity by paperwork and administrative. It's called a 5150. You don't get to go to court over this. You're just deemed insane and locked up. That happens. Does that person have due process? Indeed. If you're exhibiting a threat to yourself or others through mental incompetence, defect, or otherwise, you can be 5150'd. You don't get to go to court. You don't get to ask a judge. It doesn't happen.
I'm not saying that the government can't take actions against you before it's all adjudicated in a court of law or it's been presented before a
we're trying
grand
to clarify
jury.
for you.
I'm saying that if they do that, then you are able to open up a case against the government or
in
report.
some circumstances,
and it has to be in
some
conformity
individuals
with-
have some rights and some do not. So the way the Constitution works, in Texas, there was a big dispute over the southern border when the Texas State Guard were securing the southern border with concertina wire, and the federal government sent in feds to cut the wire and allow people to cross over illegally. The issue at play, the reason why Texas sent the immigrants to Martha's Vineyard in New York was because the Constitution grants full immigration authority and foreign relations to the executive branch. The judiciary has zero authority on instances of foreign affairs. When a person crosses the border illegally, it doesn't go to a judiciary. The reason why progressives have been saying judicial warrant over and over again is because what they're saying is, outside of the process of the Constitution, we want a court to make an argument against the executive branch.
How do you mean outside of the process of the Constitution?
The Constitution gives full authority on foreign affairs to the executive branch. So what we have are immigration courts, but these immigration courts operate under Trump, not the Supreme Court. That means immigration courts are not judicial hearings, nor does a non-citizen have a right to a judicial hearing. They go to federal executive immigration courts.
You still have due process rights
No,
even in
because-
No, hold on. You are correct. But
Even in-
due process is different from person to person. Due process for an American citizen is different for a non-citizen. So
I'm not saying it's not different, but I'm saying that there are minimum standards of due process that
Agreed.
are applied to every single person
And the due
in which the state acts
process
against
for an
them.
illegal immigrant is called expedited removal. That is, a federal immigration officer gets an order from an executive judge, not a judicial judge, for expedited removal of an individual. They don't go to court, there's no jury, and there's no banging a gavel. The officer
And here's where it gets absolutely hilarious. So Kaity brings up this Kilmar Berger Garcia case as her smoking gun proof that Trump is violating people's constitutional rights. And Tim immediately calls her out. Do you actually know the details of this case, or are you just repeating what you heard? And she starts rattling off these details, like he was illegally deported, he had a stay of removal, he was sent to a terrorism detention center in El Salvador. And Tim's like, okay, where are you getting this from? And she goes, Wikipedia. Dude, Wikipedia. She's citing Wikipedia as her primary source in a legal debate with Tim Pool. I can't even. Like, the confidence she has while reading from Wikipedia is just chef's kiss. Because here's what actually happened with Kilmar Berger Garcia. He had an order for expedited removal. The Trump administration removed him. There was some confusion about whether he had a pending case, but ultimately, the guy was here illegally and was subject to removal. That's not a due process violation. That's the law being enforced. But the media and these activist lawyers spun it into this whole Trump illegally deported an innocent man narrative. And people like Kaity just eat it up without doing any actual research. She's not reading court documents. She's not reading ICE reports. She's reading Wikipedia summaries written by the same activists pushing the narrative. And Tim knows this. That's why he's pressing her. He's making her actually defend her claims with real sources. And she can't do it. And look, this is the fundamental problem with the anti-deportation left right now. They don't understand immigration law. They don't understand constitutional law. They just know the talking points. Due process, Fourth Amendment, illegal deportations. These are buzzwords designed to make you think Trump is acting like a dictator, when in reality, he's just enforcing laws that have been on the books for decades. Obama deported 3 million people using the exact same process. Bush did it. Clinton did it. But when Trump does it, suddenly it's unconstitutional? Give me a break. And Tim lays this out so clearly that even Kaity can't dodge it anymore. By the end of this, she's completely lost the plot. She's retreating into vague appeals to morality because she can't win on the law. And that's when you know someone's been destroyed in a debate. Let me know in the comments if you think Kaity had any valid points here, because I genuinely can't find one.
Did this to the tune of, I think, 3 million. They can literally grab the person, say, give me your ID, you're a non-citizen subject to expedited removal, that is your due process, and send them right back.
That doesn't, you think that I won't say that if that is true, that Obama wasn't violating people's due process rights? I would say that he is. That would just be
I would say
another
you're engaging in
example of
sophistry.
them. Why?
Because the Constitution makes clear that immigration is under the executive branch, and the process by which a non-citizen is due varies from expedited removal to refugee status hearings. And so what we've had is, under Obama, Bush, Democrat, Republican alike, an executive immigration officer can grant you your due process of, are you a citizen? No. Expedited removal. That's due process.
That is not under the purview of the executive. That
Yes,
is
it is.
a right that is guaranteed to every single individual within the interior
You're
of the
incorrect.
United States, or that the United States takes action against.
You're incorrect.
That doesn't hinge on whether or not the president feels like enforcing it.
No, you're incorrect. The immigration is the purview of the executive branch, and immigration courts are not judicial, they're executive.
No, I'm not saying that immigration isn't the purview of the executive branch. I'm saying that due process rights aren't a matter of if the administration decides to grant them to
Your point
people
on
or not.
your point on the Fifth Amendment, right? You brought up the Fifth Amendment. That like the act of being in the United States illegally is not considered a capital or otherwise infamous crime.
I got look.
So it doesn't matter.
I think you're just generally not understanding the way the Constitution and the law works. So I pulled this up for you. It's hard to see if I zoom in like this. Yes, U.S. immigration courts are part of the executive branch.
Okay, I
This
didn't
means-
dispute that though.
Okay, but this means you're not getting a trial in a court. Immigration courts, they're called courts, but they're executive functions. You don't go before a jury or a judge for issues of immigration. This is not me making an opinion statement. When someone is not a citizen, the issue of immigration is the executive branch. They don't give you a hearing. They snap their fingers. Now, you can argue it shouldn't be that way, but this is because the Constitution gives issues of foreign affairs solely to the executive branch. So due process means the legal process under the Constitution by which you are due. If you are a foreign citizen who enters our country, that is the sole purview of the executive branch to snap their fingers
nothing
and
that
remove
you've
you.
said contradicts what I've said, because I already granted that due process looks different for every single individual.
Which would mean
because it does
Kilmar
depend.
Abrego Garcia got his due process.
No, he had his due process rights violated.
How?
He was sent to CICOT. He was not supposed to be removed from this country.
Says who?
He had, because he already had a stay of removal.
He had expedited removal, indeed.
No. He had something designated on his own immigration.
Okay, look.
We can totally pull this up.
Here's the real challenge we're facing right now. You don't know these
Garcia.
stories, and you're basing it off of
I
conjecture
can't
and
recall
activist
all
opinion.
of the details
I
accurately.
know,
so
I
let
can.
me pull up.
Kilmar Abrego Garcia had an order for expedited removal, but it was stayed because they couldn't remove him to send him back to
He's
Guatemala.
a Salvadoran man living in the United States, was illegally deported on March 15, 2025.
Okay, what are you reading?
By the Wikipedia, by the U.S.
And then
government.
Wikipedia is not a real source.
Under the government. We can go to the primary sources that they
Indeed,
link.
you should. You should read the court documents from ICE. Because I'll just...
Under the Trump administration, which it called an administrative error, which you disputed.
No.
You said he wasn't deported.
An administrative error is not a
error.
violation of due process.
At the time, he had never been charged with or convicted of a crime in either country. Despite this, he was imprisoned without trial in the Salvadoran
God.
Terrorism Confinement Center, CICOT.
Oh, liberals are fucking retarded. I can't do this.
All right, so let's just call it what it is. Tim Pool absolutely demolished Kaity in this debate. Like, it wasn't even close. She came in with confidence, thinking she had the moral high ground and the constitutional receipts to back it up. And within 10 minutes, Tim had systematically dismantled every single argument she made. He explained due process. He explained expedited removal. He explained the difference between citizens and non-citizens under the law. He explained how immigration courts work. He cited the actual text of the Constitution. And what did Kaity have? Wikipedia summaries and feelings. That's it. And look, I'm not trying to pile on here, but this is such a perfect example of what's wrong with the left's immigration messaging right now. They've convinced themselves and their base that enforcing immigration law is inherently immoral and unconstitutional. They throw around phrases like due process and Fourth Amendment rights without actually understanding what those things mean in the context of immigration law. And when someone like Tim, who actually knows the law, challenges them on it, they fall apart. They can't defend their position because it's built on vibes and activist narratives, not legal reality. And here's the bigger picture. The American people voted for this. They voted for mass deportations. They voted for border security. They voted for immigration enforcement. That was one of the top issues in the election, and Trump won decisively. So when activists and politicians try to block ICE operations, try to interfere with deportations, try to make this a constitutional crisis, they're not defending the rule of law. They're subverting democracy. Because the voters spoke, and the voters said, we want our immigration laws enforced. And that's exactly what Trump is doing. Now, does that mean every single deportation is going to be perfect? No. There's going to be administrative errors. There's going to be cases that need review. But the vast majority of these deportations are people who are here illegally, who went through the legal process, and who were ordered removed. That's not a violation of due process. That's the process working as intended. And people like Kaity and the rest of the open borders left need to come to terms with that. All right, if you guys enjoyed watching Tim dismantle this argument, make sure you hit that like button, share this video, and drop a comment letting me know what you think. Do you think Kaity had any valid points, or was this a complete wipeout? I think we all know the answer, but I want to hear from you. This is what we do here at MB. We break down these debates, we call out the BS, and we give you the truth without the spin. So make sure you're subscribed because we've got a lot more of this coming. Stay sharp. I'll see you in the next one.